Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Project LS400 episode number 7. So I'm almost ready to start building the engine up again. There's only 3 things I need to do. I need to check the valve clearance. I've done this cylinder bank, everything looks good. Second thing I need to do is to remove all this extra and faulty wiring that was inserted. And I need to do a lot of cleaning up. I've already started over there. Maybe you can see it. You can see the aluminum shine through now. It was black before that. When everything is done and the valve clearance is set, I'm not sure if I have to make adjustments to the valve train. And hopefully the last few parts are coming in this afternoon, being the valve cover gaskets and rubber grommets and small bits and bobs, and then I'm ready to put things back together again. So off we go. First thing I want to do in this episode is remove this faulty wiring. And as I was cleaning up down behind the right headlight, I pulled out all of these hoses there. Those are extra coolant hoses that were just cut off and left in place. So my guess is we'll find some pretty funky wiring to this episode. So off we go. This is the extra loom that came out and went to the LPG computer. I think this is where they put all the wires together. You can see that here is all the wire pairs just twisted together. Normally one would come from the injector, go into the LPG computer. When it is set to LPG, this will be interrupted, and when it's switched back on to petrol, these wires get reconnected by the computer. Now the car has to run on petrol, so what they did is they cut them off and twist them together. That's craftsmanship for you. So we're a few minutes ahead in time. This is the cylinder 1 injector cable, the one with a snapped off clip. There are 2 wires soldered on here, one for the interrupter and feedback cable, and here's another one on the earth. Not sure why this one has an extra wire attached to it. I'll remove it. And then, as you can see, all the wires are color coded. You got blue, red, green and yellow. And the injectors on this side, 3 of them have the same colors, but they didn't match the color. So the injector that is fed, for instance, this one has a yellow wire on there in the factory wiring loom, but they connected the blue wires to that, and that's their extra yellow cable to the number 7 cylinder. So I don't understand why they didn't match the colors of the wiring. Would make more sense when you have to troubleshoot. But that's one of the many surprises on this car. So now I have both wiring looms separated from each other, so I can start repairing it. Only a small issue. Hope I can show you on camera. Let me adjust you. This is the rearmost injector, and this is the original cable over here coming out of the factory wiring loom. It's a bit short, so I hope I can strip it down enough and solder it back together, and then not have a too short cable to plug on the injector. Anywho, glad I have this untangled. On to the next job. So here is where the wire was cut, and that's where the other end is. My game plan is to remove those shrink wrapping and then resolder, rejoin the thread in its original position, and then cover it with a new shrink wiring. Got in some sort of trouble here. This is the piece of wiring that's been cut out. It's about 1.5 centimeters, say 3/4 of an inch, that's missing. So I have to make some kind of wire in between. Not sure if that's the case with all the other injectors. I'll remove all the extra wire from them and then see how I'm gonna solve this, but I'll probably end up making a small wire in between and then putting shrink tube over it. So there are all the injector connectors for the left hand side cylinder bank with their wires. I need to gap some bridges, but I did a virtual test fit at the place where the injector would be. I only need to gap I only need to bridge this gap on number 7, and the others, when I connect them where they were cut, I must have enough space to connect them to the injectors. So one bang down, another one to go. And there you have it, folks. Injector 1 of the first of 8 is reconnected to its original wiring. I bridged the gap with a small piece of wiring, put shrink tube on. So 1 down, 7 to go. I won't bore you to death with the soldering process of all of that, so I'll get back to you when I'm done. While I was busy soldering the original wires back on, I noticed that the connectors on number 3 and number 5 both have the same color coding of the wires. This black and orange one is the ground wire, earth wire. On all the injectors they have a common ground, and the colored wire is the signal that triggers the injector. Hey, I thought that's weird. Both are blue. Why is that? I shouldn't mix those two up. I got the workshop manual and took a look. And I'll explain you something about injection order of this engine. We're having a look in the workshop manual, and this explains the wire routing of the injectors. This being the ECU, and numbers 1, 7, 2, and so forth are the injectors. And as you can see here, there are only 4 outlets from the ECU towards the injectors, and they are connected in pairs. And number 3 and 5, as I just pointed out, both had a blue wire, and that's because they are triggered simultaneously. There are 2 basic injection methods for petrol engines, being the synchronous and sequential injection order. And sequential means that each injector is triggered separately on the moment that the intake valve is opened and the air towards the inlet reaches its maximum speed. It's a good time to inject the fuel, and it's always being injected on the moment that the intake valve is opened, but not on these engines. They may be the one you see uses the synchronous injection order, meaning it fires or triggers 2 injectors at once, and not necessarily on the moment that the intake valve is opened. It may be 2 small injections per cycle, and that's why the one you see FE, at least the first gen, uses this injection system, and that's why I'll see more of the same colors, only 4 colors in total for the injectors. And there you have it, folks. 2 restored injector harnesses. I put new electric tape on the main harness. Here are the connectors toward the throttle body. The other side, these ones, the last ones, or the rearmost ones, very short, were hard to solder back on, but all the others came out nice. Really hope it works. It's a pain to get to if I need to repair this again. Here are some connectors towards the water temperature sensors and an EGR solenoid. So, it took me about 2 hours to get this done. A long and tedious job. Glad it's over. Next job I need to do is to inspect the valve clearance or valve lash. Here are the values, 0.15 to 0.25 for the intakes, 0.25 to 0.23 millimeters, or 0.35 I mean, for the outlets. Got my feeler gauges at hand. I really hope everything is within spec, because setting the valve lash on this engine is quite a tedious job. The 1UZ engine works with buckets and filler plates. And it's quite a hassle to get them out and get them in. It can be done, but you have to take your time. And I've been spending so much time today. I really hope everything is within spec. And when it's not, it's not. I'll make the necessary adjustments. And if that's necessary, I'll film it and show this to you. So, off to the engine. We point you a bit more forward so you can have a look at what I'm doing. Explain a few things. Here are the cams. Below that are the cam buckets. And there's a filler plate in between to set the clearance, the gap. So if the clearance is too much, you need to remove the filler plate and throw a thicker one in. There are a wide range of filler plates available. It's a tedious job because you have to have a special tool, which I don't have, to insert between the camshaft itself, push down the bucket, and then use compressed air and a magnet to fish the filler plate out. Then you have to measure the filler plate and calculate what the new thickness of the filler plate has to be, and then insert that. After that's done, you remove the tools, and that one cam or valve clearance is adjusted. You get 32 of those, so that when you have to adjust everything or all of them, this can take a while. Process is simple. You have your feeler gauge at hand and just slide in. The intake should be between 0.15 and 0.25, so if 0.30 doesn't slide in, I consider it within spec. It's 0.25, doesn't go in. Now let's try 0.20. Slides in between. And then it slides in. You can feel it has some resistance, but you can slide it back and forth. So this one is 0.20, so that's well within spec. Let's try the rearmost one without getting any dirt in. It's the same within spec. So that was fairly easy. Now number 5. 120 slides in. This one not so easy. Let's get a thinner one, the 0.15 that is. We have 0.15. Slides in with these. Let's try 0.20 again. Could also be that it's a bit tight, but I consider that within spec. Goes in there well. That one not so much. Let's see if 0.15 slides in, and it does. So things look well. I'll do the other ones off camera. So the first half of all the valve clearances have been checked and they are all within spec. Now I need to do the second half, and this means that I have to rotate the crank one full rotation so the other valves come loose of the buckets and I can measure them with my feeler gauges. But before I can do that, I'm gonna clean up some debris that has fallen into the cylinder heads and stuck between the valves. The valve buckets and the cams. There's some sand in there, and for that I'll use this small soft brush, and this brush I will continue to use to do some dry cleaning. Just brush the dirt off because it's a little oily. It will stick to the hairs of my brush, so I can take all the debris out. Another part, not sure if you can see it. I'll just pick it up with my brush and brush it off against my vest. Kind of feel like Bob Ross. It's the following day and I just came back from the shop where I bought some more oven cleaner, some wooden cutlery and a brush. Yesterday the camera stopped working, but I did finish checking all the valve clearances. There were a few that were on the tight side, but not that much that I needed to adjust the shims and the buckets, so leave it there. I'll show you some details, some things I found under there in a later clip. What I'm now want to do is to clean the intake parts using my trusted oven cleaner method, and that's why I have left the valve covers off, mainly for two reasons. I don't have all the gaskets in yet, still waiting for parts. And now I can have a look at the cams and see which cams are closed and which not. The ones that are closed, the intakes that are closed, I'll clean up first. So what I first like to try is to scrape off as much carbon as I possibly can. I already see some things are falling into the intake part, so I think I'll stick a towel over the valves. Hope I can show you this peek inside. I hope the lighting stays as it is right now. You can see a clear track here. That's where the injector hits. That's clean, so I don't need to clean behind there. It's not the case for the other intake valve on cylinder 3, because there's just slight carbon buildup. I'll put in some paper towels there, spray in the oven cleaner, then give it a brush over to agitate it, and then see how clean they come out. Actually, this one isn't quite bad, but the other ones on bank number 2 are. So I'll have you set you up now and give it a try. I put some paper towels over the valve and valve stems, and now give it a whiz with the oven cleaner. I set this spray gun to foam, make it as frothy as possible. And now I have this brush and start to agitate it. Let's see what happens. Already see some debris coming off. The foam is getting brown, so it already starts to dissolve into the oven cleaner. I'll agitate and brush it with this. It's a plastic brush with synthetic hairs. I've been doing this for 2 or 3 minutes now. Give it a wipe with a paper towel. And it's amazing how easily all the carbon buildup comes out. There's a bit left in that corner, but I don't want to reach in too deep. Get you over here, guys. And this is how it looks now. You can see the paper towels down in there. A bit more light on there. The paper towels in there, and almost all the carbon buildup is gone. 1 down, 7 to go. I'm done with cleaning the intake runners, or at least the intakes in the cylinder heads, I should say. And they came out very clean. This is one of the later ones I did, and I must say I'm very pleased with how all of them came out. This is cylinder number 2, the intake. I'll get my lamp over. Not sure if this shows well on camera. You can see the dimples from the sand casting. There's a little carbon left in there, but it took me about 5 minutes per intake to get them clean as they are now. This was very much worth the effort. So while I'm sitting here nice and comfy on the radiator support, I wanted to end this episode, but not before I show you a few things I discovered. The most worrying one being this. You can see the scam bucket is cracked, and probably due to the tools they use to set the valve cap. Get you in a bit closer and zoom in. There's a whole piece missing right here. It rotates nice and freely, and you can see some dents. I hope you can see that. Some dents over here where they use a tool to push, and they cracked out this. I checked all the other buckets. There's the one, the adjacent one. There's a little dent. I think they just used a screwdriver at some point. Well, normally you would remove the entire cam, pull the bucket out, and replace it by a new one, but I looked at the surface and the cracks. I think it's gonna crack any further. The shim is firmly in place, so I'll leave this for now, but it's something you don't want to discover. And I'm taking my bore scope to see if I can find a cracked part, but most likely this occurred when they did the valve adjustment, and when it broke off, I assume they picked it out. Another thing is the heavy corrosion on this mating surface for the valve cover gasket. It's heavily corroded. I'm gonna Scotch-Brite it a little bit to make it more clean. Also, all the water that got in those cavities in between the intakes was coolant, and I thought about it, why that would be, and probably it's because a cracked or failed coolant line. Let's say the throttle body is over here somewhere. There's a coolant line running towards it. I believe it's this one, back under this one, and it came loose at one point. Coolant leaked in and got in those cavities. The cavities on the left hand side cylinder bank were clean. So, oh yeah, one more thing, most of the parts are in. The only thing that's missing are the 8 seals that go on top of those spark plug tubes. They are in back order for a few weeks. It's February 3rd right now, and they're due to arrive on March 1st, but I hope they come in sooner. But anyway, I can get the valve covers on, start cleaning up, and start turning this into an engine again. So, that's that for this episode. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.